When do you know that your child isn't just a picky eater? When do we know it's time to ask for help?
Absolutely, that's such a great question. And I think the important thing is to think about it in terms of when is it impacting the child's health, their growth, or their development. So clearly, if your child is not growing along his or her own growth curve, so as you recall as a parent, you go to the pediatrician and I say that's the parent star chart. Yeah. They show you how your child is growing, and if your child is growing the way he or she is supposed to, you get the Gold Star Parent Award. But if your child has been growing along a certain percentile, let's say the 25th percentile, and then he or she starts to what we call fall off the growth curve, meaning he may go, for example, from the 25th percentile to the 10th percentile, that's really a time you need to start thinking about professional services. And the key there is when your child begins to fall off the growth curve, it may be that it's not that your child is losing weight. I think that's what's deceptive. Children should always gain weight. They should always grow as predicted. So your child, for example, may be simply maintaining his weight, but at a time when he should be gaining weight. So that will be the first thing, looking at the child's growth chart and talking to your pediatrician about whether your child's growing as he or she should be. The second issue is your child's nutritional content sufficient? And in this case, you really need to have your pediatrician either look at your child's diet, you might have to keep some records, or you may need to go to a nutritionist who will analyze your child's diet and tell you, well, your child's not getting enough iron, or they're not getting enough of certain minerals. Again, that would be a time when you would want to go and get professional help. And then the last piece is if your child's intake is impacting his health in another way. So, for example, the child's cholesterol is elevated, or your child's having other kinds of problems that are a function of inadequate diet. Oftentimes, selective eaters are selecting diets that are high in fat or high in sugar. And it's interesting because it's not always the case that these children are underweight. As you indicated, they could, in fact, be overweight.
And it seems like when your child's diagnosed with autism, there's so many things to think about, and food is such an emotional issue to begin with. And so people say, well, he or she's got all these other things, so then I just want to give him the foods, but we can get to a happy child with a healthy diet, yes?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. How do you pick and choose? What do I do next? We have so many issues. We have language. We have social skills. But you have to remember that your child's diet impacts his or her, not only their growth, but also their brain development. And so it really is important to intervene if your child is not eating an adequate diet, because malnutrition early on, and again, I'm not talking about kids who are, marasmic, they have the big bellies with the skinny legs. I'm talking about kids, again, who are just, for example, eating French fries. If you're not getting adequate nutrition later on, your child may be at risk for later developmental learning or behavior problems. And we have enough problems already. We don't want to add to them. Intervening early is, like everything, critical. I know it's very, very difficult, but if you get good professional help, the great thing about these kids is the vast majority of them respond beautifully to treatment. Because they're often selective, they're actually getting hungry, they're motivated to eat, and all we need to do is expose them to new foods, and they'll actually then learn to like a lot of the foods we introduce. So if you get in there with a good professional help, intervene early, you can make a huge difference. I have tons of kids we've seen with autism who are actually the best eaters in their family. And what we like to say is the only way you can tell if a child's been to our program is our kids eat their vegetables.
That's wonderful. And so if somebody's determined that it's time to get help, let's start with how can they get help from your organization?
They can go on our website at the unmc.edu. And we have a page for pediatric feeding disorders, and we actually have an application for the screening process. They can go online and fill that out, and someone will contact them to schedule an appointment. We actually can do some evaluations by telehealth. So for parents who are at a long distance, we have been able to evaluate them without them having to come to our program. And we actually do deliver some services via telehealth. Now, if the problem is very, very severe, we may have to have the child come to us, at least for some period of time, to make a little bit of a difference in the behavior, and then follow the family via telehealth. So, you know, technology has been a big boon to us and to the families because it does sort of bridge that distance, because a lot of, there's not a widespread availability of the kinds of programs that are really helpful for these children.